So here's something, Mr. Michael,
Yes.
that came up to me in the last few weeks.
Okay.
The concept of spirituality in relationship to pride, specifically spiritual pride, and humility, and to be humble. Those two concepts, I feel, are very telling regarding someone's spiritual practice and journey.
Telling.
Yes. So off the bat, what do you think of that? Here, I just presented the title. What do you think?
No, I love the topic. I think it's a very important topic. I think that especially when you're starting something new, it's very easy to make that the pinnacle of everything. And, but I guess I'm curious about, you mentioned that it's very telling. So, like, what do you mean by telling? Like, what are some of the things that you notice?
Well, I noticed pride.
Yeah.
Definitely easy to notice pride because in the beginning, when you start a spiritual practice,
Right.
if you're born again Christian, if you just jumped into the world of yoga and Vedanta, or any kind of religious epiphany you have,
right.
what it does to the mind immediately puts you on a higher hierarchical level than everybody around you in your own head, right?
Right.
So once I discover reality and what is truth and unity versus the duality, I understand the truth. I realize what is real. And if I'm in that head state, immediately everybody else is below me because they are in the darkness.
Because you know something they don't know.
Yeah, I know something you don't know.
Oh, yeah.
And therefore, and because we are hardwired for hierarchies, we're really hardwired for that. That's kind of how we translate the world a lot of the times. When we see ourselves in that state where we are the ones holding the truth,
right,
it immediately gives us a strong sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not belonging. It's a strong sense of kind of like a status.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
that calm that comes
saying.
from being in a high status position.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're bringing in, like there's, I know this is kind of off to the side a little bit, but one of my big interests, just kind of on the side, is studying tribal psychology and what that means, right? And I think as humans, being pack animals, we try to find different groups, but once you find something that really resonates to you, it's almost like a subconscious drive to be the most outspoken member of that group, right? Because there's a fear of being ostracized by said group, right? And I could see how that could potentially tie into that hierarchical standard.
So that is a tendency to avoid speaking out, or a tendency to speak out?
Well, it could go either way, but the tendency is more to speak out more, right? But at the same time, as you're talking about, there could also be, ultimately what it's talking about is how there's almost like a subconscious need to continue to feel like you belong. And sometimes how that manifests is by being a loud member of said group.
Right. And to quote Denzel Washington, is in the movie American Gangster, he said, "The loudest man in the room is the weakest man in the room."
I like that.
Which I get the point. Some cultures would elevate you from being very loud. And that's honestly something that is prevalent in our culture, right? In a way. I know we're going on a bit of a tangent, but we'll bring it back, I promise. But the idea of how you relate to the group around you, I think it's relevant to understanding the concept of pride here. So in our culture, especially in online culture, being loud, being flamboyant, being aggressive gets you more reactions.
Yes.
Good or not, right? It's a lot about being present, but that's not always translates into being accepted, right? This is something that is that I remember feeling growing up. I always thought being loud, being the center of attention equaled more respect. And man, was I wrong. I was wrong about that fully. Now I understand, as I matured and understand also through the practice of spirituality, yoga, qigong, and tai chi, I understand that to respect, which is what I was craving and looking for, comes from being reliable. Meaning people rely on you for things. People need your help. So I see that as a level of respect. And when people rely on you, and you are reliable, right? Not just rely on you and you lie to them, but you are reliable. You can actually step up to the plate.
Right.
Earns you more respect that way.
So then I guess the question then becomes, what is the balance? How do you show that you're reliable without leaning too far into pride?
You always say balance. That's your...
It's my thing.
It's true, but that's always your cop out. You always say balance.
Balance. Everything is balanced.
Can it be just the extreme is right? Is everything balanced all the time? Yes. Everything.
The correct answer is yes.
I know, but then we wouldn't have anything to talk about, so obviously. So, okay, how do we balance?
Spoiler alert,
what
it's balance.
Okay, so first defining everything. So pride, spiritual pride. I touched on it a little bit. Let's talk about spiritual pride for a second. Spiritual pride can show up in a lot of that same situation. Example I can think of is like a teacher, a yoga teacher.
Right.
It's kind of that guru mindset. You give some sort of a half-baked spiritual point, and people were like, wow, that's amazing. I never thought about it. It's like the philosophical, and you get like credit for that, and that can elevate you.
It inflates the ego. I think this is a conversation that really stood out to me when I started my practice with you, and really started to lean into spirituality myself, was kind of this exact conversation about what spiritual pride looks like. And it's something that resonated. I mean, even all those years ago when we had that conversation of recognizing what that even looks like. I think it comes down to ultimately what you're talking about, inflation of ego, if you will, right? Like being the guru mindset, or, talking about some half-baked spiritual thing, but you're still getting the credit, you're still getting the praise, you're still getting it just elevates the ego more and more and more.
I like inflates because I'm imagining a balloon. That balloon becomes a little susceptible to a little pop. And that pop is coming. When you have an inflated ego, that pop will come. Either when you're at night sleeping, or someone's going to pop it. But that pop is coming. Because life has a way of testing your ego.
Oh, yeah. Knocking you down a few pegs.
And that's really the realization you get as a spiritual person. So in the beginning of your spiritual journey, you're elevated, like, oh, I know the truth. And then your ego gets dropped to the ground immediately, because you start realizing how far off you are from your practice. And then you start overcoming challenges, and the more you overcome, the bigger the challenges become. And then you start realizing, oh, this is the spiritual practice. It's the challenge.
Right.
I'm like, oh, so it's not really about the end result. This is what I'm supposed to do.
More about the journey.
It is the journey, really.
It's like you say, like certain elements, like fire element, is really great and awesome until you hit the first roadblock, right?
Right. It's very easy to be confident until that first block to your face. It's like Mike Tyson said, like, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Right.
And then something changes. Because it's not just you in your own mind, you're interacting with other people.
Right.
Now, here's another point. When we're talking about spirituality and the practice of it, we're talking breath work, we're talking martial arts, we're talking philosophy. I always like to think of it as something that gives you a lot of more power. More power, more abilities, more awareness. Because the more aware you are, your abilities grow. Like sometimes they talk in the spiritual world, Vedanta and yoga, and honestly in every religion, is your spiritual practice becomes so strong that you have almost godlike abilities. And it's in every religion. Every religion, every spiritual practice, everyone, literally everyone has that concept. Now, I've never seen that in person. I've never seen someone teleport or read minds. But sometimes you understand human beings so well because you did a deep dive practice in your own self that you can actually see how they feel based on muscle memory, based on how they react. Like, oh, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you can read their mind. Another example is like you have the ability to almost manipulate other people. Right? Especially if you're a high-level teacher in yoga or Tai Chi or a priest or anything that understands the concept of meaning and what gives people meaning.
Right.
Suddenly you have a lot of power to influence. And you can take that influence and direct people to what they need, right? You're a therapist. So
yes.
You have, in a sense, power over your patients. You know how to navigate their thoughts a little bit.
Yeah.
You can easily, and not easily, I mean, like, because it would be hard because you're a moral person.
Right, exactly.
So you wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't do that, I promise, yes.
Now, you saying that now made you seem more. That made you look worse. That was pride. No, but I'll say, so you have that ability. And the better you become as a therapist, the more you know people, the more you can navigate them. So that's an example of where pride can really throw you off the rail.
Oh yeah,
where definitely. You can start harming people.
Right, exactly. And also as a therapist, I can relate to what you're saying as well as seeing kind of like patterns and, you know, kind of seeing different behaviors, you know, because even though, you know, everybody's situation is different, every client is different, every client has their own equation, their own set of problems, things like that. The interesting thing is seeing the common denominators in behaviors. Right, you know, and you can actually kind of almost identify and
recognize patterns.
Recognize patterns, exactly, 100%. So that's actually where some more of the practice comes in of being able to, or the need to check my own ego as a spiritual practitioner as well as a therapist, to not jump the gun and be like, I've seen this pattern before. This is probably what's going to work for them, et cetera, et cetera. Right? That it doesn't work that way. Yeah.
Right. So, and that's kind of a good point too. To check your ego.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can be so confident that you are right that pride turns your actions from actions that are designed to do good, that you are harming people, but you're still telling yourself you're doing good.
Right, exactly.
That's kind of like that little trick on the mind a little bit. That's why a big part of spiritual practice is discrimination over your own ego. Yeah. Understanding, like you said, check my ego. So how do you check your ego? Practical spirituality, right? How do we check our ego?
Well, I mean, my process is usually just, again, taking a breath and examining myself, right? Reminding, I think one of the most powerful things I heard was, you know, nobody's a master of anything. Right. And so those moments that I start to feel like I know more, or like even just that recognition of seeing a common denominator, right, or seeing a pattern or things along those lines, like that's an indicator to me that maybe I am starting to, that maybe my ego does need to be checked, right, in the sense of, you know, like I need to lean more into the listening. I need to lean more into that yin energy. I need to lean more into humility, right, you know, and things along those lines, because I really don't know. I'm still a student, right? Everybody's still a student, right? So that moment you start to feel like you're a master, right, I think is a really great opportunity to start asking yourself, well, how can I still be a student?
Right, and the lessons never end. That's
exactly. Nobody's a master of anything.
That's really the brutal part in all of it. Because I like to say, study like you're a student, train like you're a master. Like when you're studying and learning something new, don't treat yourself like a master.
Right.
Don't come in with the attitude of I know this. Right. I know what's right. Because then you're, like you're saying, you're closing yourself off to information. Right. Because if you know, then you know. That's it. The cup is full, right? But so I say, study like you're a student, but train like you're a master. Train in a way with confidence that gives you the feeling like you've been doing this for a very long time.
Right.
And that confidence, that energy, like of being like a master, can help you out in the progression. Let me rephrase kind of what I'm saying.
Sure.
When I'm saying train like a master, I'm not saying train like you know what you're doing.
Right.
When I say train like a master, train with the attentiveness to subtleties. That's what I'm saying. Right? It's training with that sense of, like a chef, when they don't just follow the recipe, they follow the flavor of the meal.
Yep.
They're like, how can I make this a little better? So if you do something like yoga and you're practicing, rather than just follow exactly what the teacher says, when you train, maybe add a little more of your own. This is a good use of ego, in my opinion. Add a little bit of your own spirit into the practice. What would be more fun? What would feel better for my body? Should I stretch more this way? Should I open here? Maybe deeper breath, maybe a little humming here. Like that curious understanding and listening that comes from practicing on refinement. You know what I'm saying? It's like looking for subtleties.
Yeah, subtleties, the tiny details, right? The more you can kind of tune into. But I think that brings up an interesting question about like ego in itself, right? I think it's more of, you know, the healthy form of ego is almost like the awareness of self. The imbalance of ego is how it's presented and manifested to others.
Right. That's an interesting one. Because I think of the ego as just another form of energy.
Right.
Right. Everything we are is energy. Our body moving, it's energy. It's matter and energy, of course. And our thoughts is energy. And so our ego is the same thing. Our ego is a sense of self, of I am.
Right.
So that I am is just another form of energy that is there for a purpose. So you shouldn't see it as an enemy.
Right.
You shouldn't say, oh, if I have an ego, that's a problem.
Exactly.
No, that's not a problem. If you have an ego, that's a reason for it, has a function. Just like everything in our body. I have fingers, I have toes, I have knees, I got feet, I got thoughts, I got eyelashes. All these things serve to a certain function.
Right.
The ego is the same. If you have that sense of I am, it's there for a reason.
Right.
One of the reasons, a very easy one, is to keep you alive. Right? A sense of I am helps you also find your community, because you're trying to recognize people who are similar to you. So understanding you help you understand how to connect. And it gets deeper and deeper into that, but I think of it as just as another force. So the question is, how do you, one, recognize that force? How can you tell that this is the one dictating the tone? And two, how do you channel it? So let's focus on that first one. How can I tell that's the ego? How can I, when I make a decision, how do I know that's an ego decision? That's not a spirit decision. That's not intuition. That's ego right there.
That's a good question. I'm at a loss for that. So how do you recognize that you're making a decision based off of ego versus what's spiritual ultimately?
Yes. My teachers in the Shivananda have a good answer for that.
Yeah? What was their answer?
Well, their answer, they say, here's a good framework. Obviously, it gets more and more complex and more subtle. But the framework is, ego is what is pleasant. Your spirit is what is good. Now, the best if something is good is pleasant.
Right.
But if you have to choose between what is good as well as pleasant, now you know what's the difference.
I like that.
And that's very easy to tell. If you wake up at 5 a.m. and like, you know, it would be good meditation. That would be a really good thing to do. And you know it's good, and you know you need it. And then it's like, but you know it's so pleasant?
Going back to sleep.
It's just closing my eyes.
Yep.
Forget about it.
Yep.
So that's a very gross, simple version of What is pleasant and what is good?
I think that maps it out very practically,
Right.
you know? I think that's a really good framework, right? The difference between what is good and what is pleasant, right? It's almost goes back to what we were talking about, what's relaxing, what's numbing, right? You know, or things along those lines, right? So what's something that will be enriching to me versus something that just feels pleasant, right? Very easy to just go back to sleep at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm guilty of that for sure. But in reality, if I was going to be doing something that was good, you know, I'd probably take the dog out for a nice early walk or something along those lines.
Let me jump ahead if you don't mind.
Do it.
So when you miss the practice, sometimes you say, oh, what's wrong with me? Why didn't I do meditation? I'm such a stupid person.
Yep.
Why? Meditation is so important, and I chose to sleep.
We call that negative self-talk in the biz.
Now, but that's also ego.
Yep.
And now here's the interesting concept that I started noticing is that negative talk is comforting. Negative anger and let's say even depressive thoughts are comforting thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm not saying they make you feel good.
Right, but they're familiar.
But they're familiar. Exactly. They're familiar negative thoughts. And familiar is something that is specifically associated with our survival part of our brain. Because familiar equals safe.
Yes.
So it can be destructive, self-destructive thoughts, aggression, fear, anger, what else can I think? Anxiety is a good example. They are familiar, therefore they are safe, therefore they are comforting.
Right.
But speaking your mind sometimes, that is not safe.
Right.
Speaking truth, that's not always safe.
Nope.
Doing things that are healthy and supporting for you is unfamiliar, therefore they're not safe. So that is another example of how to tell the difference between the ego and your spirit, or pride and spirit, is what is good and what is pleasant, what is familiar and what is
slightly uncomfortable.
I don't know comfortable if I.
Yeah, I was curious how you would frame that, right? You know, because I hear what you're saying.
I got something.
Okay, all right.
It's cooking. So it's the familiar, would be your ego. Yep. And the expansive, the one that takes you out of the comfort zone. That would be a good sign of intuition. So I like to call it ego and intuition.
Ego and intuition.
Not a way of saying spirit or pride.
Right.
Okay. Now I'm curious what you have to say.
Well, I was just going to say that I feel like, you know, the way that we're presenting this, you know, is to add clarity. It's not necessarily looking at it from what's comfortable versus what's uncomfortable, right? Because sometimes things that are good can actually be comfortable, right? It's not uncomfortable for me to go lean into meditation or go for a nice walk early in the morning or things along those lines, you know, but I think that you're right. It's that what's expansive, what's enriching to the spirit, right? You know, like what is that good aspect, good and pleasant, right? You know, you can have that as long as it's something that's moving you in the right direction, right? So it's, you know, it's like with therapy, right? If we're identifying our goals, right? And I have to say that I can definitely relate to what you're saying with that negative self-talk, right? A lot of the work that, you know, I find I do, especially when I'm working with behavioralist modalities, is mental reframing, right? Trying to break from the negative self-talk, right? Those thought loops, because that's what's familiar, right? There's a level of comfort to that. It's almost reinforcing, right? And really taking that shift into something that's good, which is, well, how do you count the successes? Like, what can you do to kind of push back a little bit on that? Have your positive self-talk, right? You know, just kind of changing that whole influence of thought, feelings, and behaviors to something that's working for you rather than what's working against you.
Right. And I have two thoughts on this, but I'm afraid we are getting away from the concept of pride and spirituality.
Okay.
Spiritual pride. So I'll just say this, and let's try to veer it back.
Sure.
Because it's a question maybe for another podcast.
Okay.
The question is, so why the hell, Mr. Michael, are we so resistant to our own progression sometimes?
Well, because...
Are we afraid of progression? Is it that what it is? We're so afraid of getting out of the comfort zone?
I don't think it's necessarily that it's afraid as much as it is unfamiliar and different, right? Like you're ultimately shifting baselines, right? So if the human brain is there to keep you alive, right? It's not there to keep you happy, right?
That's really what the ego, that's the role of the ego, is to keep you alive. That's why it keeps affirming, I am.
Exactly.
Familiar.
So if you think about your life trajectory and you get to a certain age where you decide that you want to start making different changes or you want to lead into different practices, you want to start differentiating the difference between what's pleasant and what's good, right? Our brain isn't necessarily wired to just dive right in, right? Our brain is there to say like, well, hold on, like I just turned 39 years old. So for 39 years, right, I have been kept safe and alive by operating off of this baseline, right? And so it can be very unfamiliar and sometimes uncomfortable to make those shifts into something new, right? So you're constantly dealing with this like resistance, right, that comes with shifting into a different frequency, a different baseline, a different pattern of behavior.
Well, exactly. That's the metaphor of the caveman in the cave.
Right.
In the cave, it's safe. There's no predators. But there's also no blueberries or fruit.
Exactly. Right.
Maybe
exactly.
some mushroom, but you'll turn into a mole man in no time.
Definitely.
But that's the analogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need the safety of the cave, but you also need to go out into the world.
Right.
Those two things, we need it to kind of be human beings. And that cave can come in many forms. That cave can come in the form of smoking. That cave can come in the form of reducing your self-worth so you don't rock the boat too much. That cave can come in the form, sometimes extreme behavior, sometimes adrenaline rush, even exercise, things that are considered good.
Right.
That cave, you can be comfortable with destructive action.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay. Putting that aside for a moment, let's veer ourselves back into the spiritual pride. So, spiritual narcissism.
Ooh.
Here's a topic. Because, or a subtopic in this case, here's something I'm noticing. Because spiritual is self-work. It's really working on yourself. And specifically on reducing your ego. However, I see how people use spiritual practices as a way to self-obsess. It's about me. God is in me. I am so important. My role is so important in this world. I'm like blah, 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 blah. Therefore, because I'm so important, I gotta work on myself, and anyone who interferes with my self-work, they're evil, they're trying to drag me to hell, they just blind to the unity of the world. Like it can turn easily into self-obsession.
Right.
And it's funny because Kayla mentioned that yesterday, and she goes, that's an interesting point. Oh, there she is. She's right there.
Oh,
she mentioned an interesting point that a lot of time the feminine energy manifestation of spiritual pride shows up in, as she goes, self-righteous bitch. It's kind of like that self-obsessed. It's that. I'm saying it too many times. The idea like I'm the most important thing in this world.
Right.
And she also mentioned in the masculine place, the masculine energy manifestation is manipulation. Is actually using the spiritual practice and it's called the whiff of freedom to manipulate and force people to do, not force, but
to guide them in a manipulative way
into things that are good for you.
Right.
We see it in the manosphere, right? We see it in the manosphere online. We'll say, this is how you'll be happy, this is how you'll be good.
Yep.
Or, all these sex cults, they start very nice and then they turn into a sex cult easily because of a very charismatic, spiritual,
right?
And they believe what they're doing.
Oh yeah,
spiritual and highly energetic and conscientious person. But the morality part is completely jaded through their own pride and ego to the point they barely even notice. They think manipulating other people is the equivalent of doing Lord's work.
Right.
It's the man that took over the spirit.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So those two versions of spiritual pride or spiritual toxicity.
Yeah.
In the feminine and the masculine. Feminine self-obsession, masculine
manipulation. Yeah, so, right.
So here, I'm taking all this and throwing it to you. Go.
Oh, I agree.
Okay. You're a humble person.
I'm so humble. Let me tell you how humble I am.
I'm the most humble.
I'm the most humble person, right?
But please, here. So what do you think of that? What do you really think of it as kind of like this dichotomy of the feminine, the masculine? How does spiritual pride you see manifest? Like let's say in the world of therapy, where do you see that show up in the world of therapy?
Like the spiritual pride piece or the spiritual narcissistic, like toxicity, right? You know, could show up in.
It can be intellectual pride.
Yeah, exactly. Intellectual pride. You know, like for example, if I'm seeing a couple, right, and one person is completely closed off to the opinions of the other, right? You know, because they know everything, right, and they're ultimately just trying to pay me to say that the other person is the one that's wrong, and you know, there's
like
nothing
hiring
that can
a mercenary.
Yeah, exactly, like hiring a mercenary. Exactly, totally.
To clean after himself.
It feels like that sometimes, you know, and it's funny because the moment I will start to push back and try to turn the mirror on them, they leave. No, they don't come back. They're like, nope, that's not what I was looking
something
for.
Fishy about
something
that.
fishy about that guy.
Fishy about that therapist. He didn't tell me I was right.
Exactly.
What am I paying for?
Totally. Exactly. 100%. You know, and tying back to, you know, what we were talking about in our AI podcast, I heard the story of you know, somebody who is seeing a couple where the one person will just go use OpenAI that reinforces their own opinion. So then when they come into session and the therapist is trying to put the mirror up to them to see what their level of accountability is, they've got all this ammo from OpenAI to just say how, no, the therapist is wrong because OpenAI says that I'm the one that's right, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah. No, but I've run into that a couple times, you know, like this whole aspect of couples coming in, one person expecting to be the one that's completely right and being completely resistant to the aspect that it's a shared problem and they have some form of accountability into it, right? You know, and sometimes those people will try to manipulate the narrative, right? And so it takes the trained ear and the trained mind of the therapist to be able to recognize the blind spots and actually be able to put it back on that individual to challenge where they're coming from and to challenge what role they may have actually contributed to getting us to where we are, which can be an uncomfortable question.
Right. So let me expand on that a little bit, and then I want to go back to another point. Where does it show up as a therapist and in the therapist world?
Are you talking about me?
Yeah, you. Where does it show up for you?
Where does it show up for
and also
me?
what you see in the community of people with therapists, like healers, right? Because your world is a very wide net of world.
Oh yeah.
People all over are going to therapists. Like you said, those two couples who came, or that couple that came to you, would go and see another therapist until they find someone who affirms them.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So where do you see that spiritual pride or intellectual pride or intellectual toxicity show up in the field of like therapy, for example?
I would say that I see it come
without shitting on anyone.
No, I'm not. No. I'm definitely not going to be doing that.
You never
no mentioning names or anything along those lines. But I feel that there can be. So I like to think idealistically that those that take on the role of a therapist are there because they want to genuinely serve others. They want to serve the client. They want to serve their peers. They want to serve their colleagues, right? They want to be in this role of service.
Right.
What I feel sometimes is that there is, even within that world, exactly what we're talking about with the spiritual pride and the hierarchy and things like that. People starting to compare their trainings, right? Or people coming up with new modalities and, acting like, they're the most learned individual that then charges you, exorbitant amount of money to, teach you something that only has a slight deviation from another modality or something along those lines, right? I won't name the specific training that I went to, but I went to one not too long ago that halfway through, I literally just thought to myself, this is a scam. I felt so bad saying it, but I was like, this is a scam. And you could tell by the energy of the people that were presenting the information and the processes that they had put in place in order to get to this level of certification and things like that were very, very self-serving. There was like and it's so hard to explain because it was a feeling. It was like an energetic feeling that I had. On the surface, they seemed like very nice, approachable people. Right. But there was like a feeling there that I just couldn't get over, that was just like, I know more than you, and I've had so many lived experiences, and that's what has put me here in this position to be able to tell you all of this information and charge you thousands of dollars so you can get a couple letters after your name. And, you know, just the way that it was like being presented, I just could not get over that feeling whatsoever. So I think that there's definitely elements in that. Yeah, a little snootiness in there, right? And that goes with other providers as well, right? And that's why I'm never offended if a client decides that I'm not a good fit for them. I want them to be able to find who their genuine good fit is. But I have heard a lot of horror stories from clients that come in telling me about previous therapists they've had and some of the things that those therapists have said.
Remember when we went to New York and there was that lady that sat at the table with us and told us how she went to a therapist, and the therapist, she was a kid, and the therapist just literally gave her the silent treatment.
Oh, for like a whole hour.
And that gave her like trauma.
It actually like increased her trauma because she was bringing something extraordinarily traumatic to the table, and just the therapist
just
staring at them and waiting actually made the anxiety and the trauma worse. Right. Yeah.
It's such a, because that's also, okay. We can definitely open up more on that. That's for a different topic.
That's for a different episode.
And you know better on the topic of therapy. I have some experience. However, we talked pride. Let's talk toxic humility. Because that's something also in the spiritual practice. Because I remember I was talking to one of my colleagues yesterday, and he mentioned how someone always likes to come and give him a lot of compliments after his classes, like, oh, you're so good, and he said something like, I don't like to accept those compliments. He said something into the sense of also like, I don't think they're fully genuine, and I don't want to take them also because that's not why I'm here. And I thought to myself, I told him, I said, like, but you know, here's the funny thing, because I feel the same way, but that's your own ego,
right?
Because you not accepting those compliments with a lot of humility is actually hurting the other person.
Well, you brought up a really good example with that.
My grandma?
Your grandma. Exactly.
You tell it.
You tell it? Okay. Well, so Shahar had a really, really good point on this that, you know, at least stuck with me. Because I can relate, right? So it was your grandma, right? You know, would give you money for your birthday.
Me and all my brothers.
Right? You and all your brothers, right? And one of the natural, you know, kind of responses to that is like, oh no, I don't, you know, you don't need to give me this, right? You know,
my
things
siblings,
along those lines.
my brothers were like, no, grandma, it's okay, you should keep it, it's yours, blah blah blah. And I remember saying to myself, if I was my grandma, I would be annoyed at that response. I would be annoyed at that response because who are you snot-nosed brat, telling me
what to do with my money?
Like, you don't take care of it. I take care of you.
Right.
So when I took the money, I always acted like it was the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
That, oh my God, I'm so happy. Like, thank God. Like, that means a lot to me.
And that in turn is the gift that you were giving to her.
That would be a very high opinion of myself to think that way.
I'm looking at it objectively.
But I would say that when someone gives you a compliment, you should take it.
Definitely.
When someone gives you a gift, it's important to learn how to receive gifts well. Because when someone comes out of their way to compliment you, it takes you a little bit of ego, right? It's kind of a little scary. Like if I went to a lecture and I loved the lecturer and they have kind of this greater than life energy, and I go to him and I say, wow, that was really good, and they're like, oh, thank you, and then talk to someone else, I'm like, you piece.
Yeah.
It takes, that was scary to come up
Yeah,
and tell you
definitely.
that.
Took a level of vulnerability.
Yeah, I was vulnerable here with you, and I understand that obviously they're busy and they're seeing like 1,000 people at each time. You can't notice everyone. So you know, sometimes it's out of your way, but if you have the ability to someone being vulnerable to you, you can always be vulnerable back.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's when humility can become toxic sometimes, because you are now taking your humility and you turn it into pride. Like, oh, don't give me gift.
I don't need that.
Don't give me that. You shouldn't give me gifts. Oh, you. I'm better than you. Like, don't give me.
I live in so much service that I don't need any of this recognition or validation.
Or another version of that, it can also show up as a caretaker, right? A therapist or someone who takes care of others. Healers, that is a very common issue. They will dedicate so much energy towards helping others, but they will refuse help for themselves.
Oh yeah, that's
themselves.
That's the classic joke. Therapists are notorious for not taking their own advice.
Hilarious. Hilarious joke. But it's true.
Yeah.
It is true. So there's a room for humility to become toxic. So I would say, and this is just me guessing directly from the top of my head, the feminine energy version of hyper humility would be almost passiveness. Like, you take the rope and I'll just suffer. Right? Like the Jewish mother. Oh, it's fine. You do what you want to do. I'll just suffer here.
Don't worry about what it'll do to me. Right?
Which, by the way, I'm very guilty of. I'm very guilty of that.
It's true.
I have a secret Jewish mother in me. And the hyper masculinity version of intense humility would be, don't take care of me, I can take care of myself.
Yeah, refusing to accept help or ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the suffer in silence.
Suffer in silence. That's the classic male stigma.
Exactly. So that's another version of that. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, no. I think that outlines it extraordinarily well, right? You know, and that obviously leans into, you know, some of my soft spots when it comes to reducing the stigma surrounding males, you know, accepting mental health and things like that, because that also takes a level of humility and vulnerability to ask for help, to recognize that maybe you need some assistance, right? You know, and I definitely also like what you're saying about that passivity, you know, kind of aspect as well, right? You know, that, oh, I don't need any, you know, like I don't need the compliments. I don't need things like that, because that can easily switch back around. So then...
Oh, it can also show up as like... for example, this is something that I know from my own life. It's a person in my life that I know, to me, I think they're great. I think they're the most amazing person. Not you. You're a piece of SOB.
I'll take that as well.
I love your bald head. I would say that.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. But I think they're the greatest. And they have so much self-doubt. Whenever there's an opportunity to take more responsibility, or an opportunity to go on their own, to be successful, to like start their own business, or to take the reins, rather than being a supportive character in someone else's life, they won't take it. Because they keep saying they lower their own esteem,
right?
In a way, and from a humility space, from like, no, I don't want to speak up too much. Like, I'm not that great, and it's one of the reasons I respect them. But at the same time, I don't understand, why would you say that to yourself? Like, why would you limit yourself to that extent? And that's another example, in my opinion, of toxic humility. Where you just refuse to take leadership over your own life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
So that's another example of that.
Yeah.
And now we sit in silence.
And now we sit in silence as we reflect on
and
pride and humility.
Moment of meditation.
Yes.
So okay, let's. I guess this is as best as cue as any to let's summarize and close ourselves.
Sounds good.
So we talked about spirituality, pride, and humility.
Yep.
Pride and prejudice? No, that can't be.
No.
I'm not fully understanding the word prejudice, to be fair. But what is prejudice?
I have some things that you should read.
Pride is prejudice. But pride and humility, spiritual pride, spiritual humility. The masculine toxic version of pride, the feminine toxic version of pride, the toxic version of humility in the masculine sense, and the toxic version of humility in the feminine sense, and kind of going over all that concept. For males, it's either I'll suffer in silence.
Yep. Or I'll manipulate.
And for feminine energy is I'll just be taken away, like passivity, or as Kayla says, self-righteous bitch.
Yeah, so full of yourself.
So
yes.
It's all about me.
Yes.
That's the energy. So I think that's pretty much it. Anything you want to close us off with?
Well, I think that it all comes back to my favorite word of balance, right? You know, really learning.
Answer for everything.
I know. Well, what can I say?
Shouldn't have taught you Qigong.
No, I don't know. You might not be in this position then, right? You know, but thank you. There's me taking the compliment.
And me accepting your thank you.
There you go. See, there's the practical.
We are perfectly balanced.
Practice.
And we don't have any problems of our own.
Exactly. And
we don't have any pride.
And I'll tell you how humble I am all the time.
So humble.
So humble.
Exactly humble.
That exact level of humility. Okay, right.
Now that we talked enough nonsense.
Yes.
I want to encourage everybody who listen to this podcast, share your experience, if you don't mind. Share your experience with pride from your own spiritual practice, your own experience of humility, where you were too humble and where you're too prideful. And I'm curious what you guys think. You agree? Disagree? I'd love disagreement. I love agreement. We want to tackle all of it.
We love conversations.
Oh, we are chatterboxes for sure. So thank you very much. Do that like thingy. Do that subscribe thingy. Do
Smash
whatever
bells or whatever you need to do.
The internet tells you do.
Do the internet.
Whatever it tells you, just do that. As long as we get the credit.
That's right. Exactly.
Not serious.
All right.
I think that's it. I think